They threw a party that night. Champagne, balloons, a big sign that said J&E headquarters, right where my husband and I used to park our old station wagon. John gave a speech about legacy. Emily laughed with investors. And me? I sat in a quiet office 3 blocks away, signing one last deed, hand steady, but heart pounding. "Sign here, Linda," my lawyer said. The pen felt heavier than ever. 30 years of skipped vacations, second jobs, and saying yes to their dreams. They toasted their future, not knowing I'd never signed it away. Not then, not ever. By Monday, my name was on every lease. By Friday, Emily screamed. John pounded on locked doors. The sold sign flapped in the breeze. And I just poured lemonade and smiled. Funny thing about foundations, people forget who poured them. I wasn't born into wealth. My daddy laid tile for 40 years, hands cracked, knees ruined, but he always said, if you can't afford it twice, you save until you can. So I did. Late night shifts at the library, coupon clipping like it was a second job, said no to new shoes, no to girls' trips. So one day, I could say yes to something bigger. In 1995, my husband and I bought a 2-story office building, peeling paint, rusted fire escape, no elevator, but I saw a future there. We made it a home, bottom floor, book cafe with old jazz records. Upstairs, rented rooms, painted by hand. The wallpaper on the second floor still has a bubble where John spilled glue, helping me patch a corner in '99. He was 10, fell asleep on the lease folder with glitter on his cheek. I never forgot that. By high school, he called it our legacy. By 30, he was calling it his, and I let him. It felt good, watching your child take pride in something you built. Even Emily helped decorate during Christmas. We were a team, until they stopped saying we. The first time John said, "my building," I thought he was just excited. The 5th time he corrected me, out loud, in front of tenants. I laughed it off, but I remembered. I didn't stay quiet because I was weak. I stayed quiet because I was watching, waiting. And then, one rainy Thursday, I opened an old maintenance folder and found a paper my husband never told me about. And just like that, everything changed. John started his company in the front room, what used to be our cafe, back when the smell of old books and cinnamon rolls filled the air. He called it J&M Consulting. Just 2 desks, a secondhand printer, and a cracked Keurig that hissed like a dying kettle. But he had ambition. He worked late, landed clients, started showing up in button-down shirts I didn't buy. And I was proud. He was building something real. He even asked if he could rent the upstairs office to make space for Emily. She'd be handling marketing. Of course I said yes. I even lowered the rent, just enough for them to feel independent, but not so low that it looked like charity. For a while, it felt like we were all winning. John would wave at me in the hallway, coffee in one hand, client binder in the other. Sometimes he even said, "Mom, we're going to take this building to the next level." But then things changed. The sign on the front door didn't say Suite 101 anymore. It said, "Welcome to our building, home of J&M." He'd repainted the lobby, hung framed photos of company milestones, had business cards printed with the tagline, "Legacy, Leadership, Ownership, Ownership." I didn't say anything, but I started writing things down, dates, quotes, invoices, because when someone tells the same story enough times, they start to believe it, even if it isn't theirs to tell. Pause. And when I found out he was negotiating a long-term lease with my name conveniently left off the paperwork, that's when my pride cracked and my curiosity turned sharp, because what I discovered next didn't just shift the story, it rewrote who actually owned the pen. It started with a broken sink in the back hallway. John's team called a plumber. They left the invoice on my kitchen counter, like I was still just the landlord's wife. I went looking for the old maintenance folder. It hadn't been touched in years, still tucked between tax files and my husband's retirement papers. That's when I saw it. A yellow envelope, brittle at the edges, stamped Warranty Deed, 1995. My heart did a stutter step. Inside, a notarized contract, 2 signatures, mine, clear and steady, his, scribbled like he'd signed in a rush. I flipped the page. Grantor, Linda Mae Anderson. Grantee, Linda Mae Anderson. Sole proprietor. I blinked, checked again. Only my name, no cosign, no joint ownership, just me. My husband had signed as a witness, not a partner. I sat there stunned, and then it hit me. He knew. Back then, he'd insisted on it. I could still hear his voice from that day. You never know what the future holds, honey. This building should be in your name, for your protection. At the time, I thought he was being sweet. Now I realized he was being smart. I stared at the paper like it was a stranger, and for a moment I felt powerful. For the first time in years, I held something they didn't know existed, something they couldn't rewrite or reframe or rebrand. Ownership, real ownership. I didn't tell anyone, not yet, because secrets like that, they don't expire, they mature. And the next time John called the building his, I just smiled and handed him the plumber's bill. Mini cliffhanger pause. I had the deed, and now I had a decision to make. Let it sit quietly in the drawer, or remind them whose name was etched in ink. I sat there for a long time, staring at the deed like it was a photograph I hadn't seen in years. My fingers traced the signature, my name, written in the same looped cursive I used to sign field trip permission slips. I hadn't felt like her in a long time, the woman who believed in things, in effort, in family. And suddenly, I remembered. I remembered the day we bought the building, my husband holding my hand outside the notary's office, me holding a cashier's check so tight it wrinkled. We didn't even tell the kids that night, just sat at the kitchen table, a bottle of cheap red wine between us. I signed the paperwork while he read the fine print aloud, twice. And right before he handed the pen back, he said, "It's in your name, Linny. That way, no one can ever take it from you." I thought he meant banks, creditors, the IRS. I didn't think he meant our children. A sound escaped my throat, half laugh, half sob. I pressed my palm over my mouth before it could become more, because if I started crying, I didn't know if I'd stop. 30 years of packing lunches, paying bills, staying up past midnight to help finish science fair projects, years of making things easier for everyone but myself. And now, they'd drawn a boundary I never thought I'd see, one that ran right through the middle of the life I'd built for them. Mini pause. But grief is funny. Sometimes it doesn't break you. It focuses you. And that night, I didn't cry. I opened a blank notebook, wrote down one word at the top, leverage. A week after I wrote leverage in that notebook, I got a call from John's assistant. She sounded hesitant. "Hi, Mrs. Anderson. John asked me to forward you the new lease agreement for the expansion. He said to loop you in, as a courtesy." As a courtesy. I opened the file. 4 pages of legal language, projected revenue, construction timelines, third-party investors, and then, under ownership and property rights, nothing. No mention of my name, no record of the deed, just J&M Headquarters, LLC, like I was renting space from them. I didn't say anything, not right away, but 2 nights later, I heard him through the vent. I was upstairs, sorting old receipts. He was downstairs, pacing in the hallway, on speakerphone. "Mom's just sentimental. She doesn't understand scale. This is a real business now. We can't let feelings slow us down." Then silence. Then laughter. "Besides, the building's basically mine anyway. It wasn't what he said. It was how easily he said it, like I was a relic, a well-meaning obstacle. And just like that, the air changed. The warmth in that building, the one we painted together, the one where I patched drywall while he did math homework, it disappeared. I stayed quiet. But this time, it wasn't grief. It was strategy. Because that sentence, that one smug, careless sentence, I recorded it and saved it, just in case the day came when I'd need to remind him who he was talking to. The real question now wasn't whether he had betrayed me. It was how far he was willing to go and how far I was willing to let him fall. I didn't confront him. Not yet. There's a certain power in silence, especially when they think you've already surrendered. Let them celebrate. Let them underestimate you. That's how you buy time. So while John ordered custom signage and posed for LinkedIn updates, I started gathering things: bank statements, property appraisals, tax records. I met with a lawyer 3 towns over, someone with no ties to anyone local, told her everything, showed her the deed, the voicemail, the lease draft. She sat back in her chair, flipped through the documents, and said, "This isn't complicated. You're not just the owner. You're the one holding the entire foundation." That night, I poured a glass of wine, just one this time, and opened the notebook again. Page 2. Assets versus leverage. Emotional versus his legal. Quiet versus his public. I made lists. I made copies. I called the accountant who helped me during the recession. I liquidated 2 small investment accounts I'd forgotten I even had. Then I did something that felt almost petty. I walked past the new office sign out front, J&M headquarters, and snapped a photo, printed it, taped it to the back of my notebook, not to get revenge, to remember what entitlement looks like when it forgets who paid the down payment. People think age makes you slow, but I've found it just makes you deliberate. And while they expanded, branded, and borrowed, I watched and waited, because momentum is a funny thing. It only works until the ground beneath you shifts. And I was done waiting. I wasn't going to knock down their empire. I was going to quietly buy it back, piece by piece. 3 weeks later, I signed the papers. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet Tuesday morning, one signature at a time. I bought out the final 40% of the building. Market rate? No. I paid twice what it was worth, because sometimes you don't pay to win. You pay to make a point. The offer had gone through a private equity firm I used to tutor the founder's daughter for. No last names, no red flags. John didn't know. Emily didn't suspect. They were too busy finalizing their launch party, full-page flyers, press kits, even a social media campaign. J&M taking the future higher. The irony nearly made me laugh. The day of the event, I wore my quietest shoes and walked through the lobby like I didn't belong. No one noticed me until the champagne flutes were raised, until the lawyer stepped onto the mic and cleared his throat. On behalf of the new owner of this property, effective immediately, we'd like to acknowledge a transfer of full legal and financial control. The room fell still. I watched John's face drain. Emily dropped her phone. And when the lawyer said my name, they didn't even turn toward me. They looked at each other, like the betrayal had just become mutual. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like truth, like gravity reasserting itself, because sometimes the loudest justice isn't shouted. It's served on company letterhead. But as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse, John whispering something to Emily, eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. And in that moment, I realized they weren't done yet, and neither was I. It didn't take long for the news to spread. By Thursday, the local business journal ran a headline, "Retired teacher reclaims family building in surprise buyout. Legal, decisive, and undeniably personal." They used my old yearbook photo, hair bigger, smile brighter. Underneath it, The subheading read, "She built it. Now she owns it. Again." I didn't ask for the spotlight, but it came anyway. The neighborhood cafe asked if I'd do a Women in Leadership panel. The tenants started addressing me differently, not just Linda, but Ms. Anderson. Even the mailman joked, didn't know I was delivering to royalty now. But it wasn't the press or the praise that changed everything. It was the silence. John stopped showing up to the office. Emily canceled all her social media accounts. The investors? They called me directly. They wanted to renegotiate with me. And while I never raised my voice, my name was on every contract. My initials were on every page, every entrance badge reissued under my approval. But the building wasn't the only thing that changed. Whispers started among clients, partners, even family. Little questions that floated like smoke. How could they not know she still owned it? Did they try to push her out? What kind of kids? Forget who built the walls around them. I didn't answer any of them. Not yet, because I knew this wasn't over. It wasn't about real estate anymore. It was about memory and legacy. And the next time I saw John, he didn't say a word, but he handed me something that made me realize he still had one card left to play. He came to the house the next day, didn't call, didn't text, just stood on my porch like he used to when he forgot his keys after football practice. Except this time, he wasn't holding a backpack. He was holding an envelope. We sat in silence at the kitchen table, just like we used to. Same chipped mug, same ticking clock, but everything felt colder. He slid the envelope across. "It's the lease termination letter set," he said. "Effective immediately." I nodded. "And your office furniture?" I asked. "Storage unit, already cleared out." He wouldn't meet my eyes. Then, just as he stood to leave, he said it. Soft, shaky, but clear. "I didn't think you'd actually fight back." I looked at him, and for the first time in months, I saw the boy again, the one who used to write me birthday poems in crayon, the one who once cried when he thought I'd missed his school play. "You didn't think I'd fight?" I said. "John, I built that building while you were still learning to spell your name." He didn't answer, just walked out the door and left it open behind him. I stared at that open door for a long time, and then I realized he wasn't the only one still hoping I'd close it. I never did close that door. Not that day, not the day after. Some part of me keeps hoping he'll walk back through it, not as the man who tried to take what wasn't his, but as the boy who once asked if he could run his lemonade stand in the front lobby because he wanted to be just like Mom. I kept the envelope he handed me. It sits in the same drawer as the deed, both signed, both final, but neither one feels like an ending. The building is quiet these days, profitable, clean, still mine. But sometimes I catch myself standing by the window, watching the parking lot the way I used to watch for the school bus, waiting for someone I'm not sure is coming back. They say legacy is what we leave behind, but sometimes legacy is what we protect, even when it tries to forget us. If you've ever given everything and felt like you disappeared in the process, you're not alone. And if someone tried to rewrite your story, what would you do with the pen? Have you ever felt forgotten in your own family's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because some stories are just beginning.